In 2011, a man named Daniel Reyes stood in a Mercedes dealership in Austin, Texas, holding a check for $84,000. He'd just closed the biggest deal of his career, a logistics contract that would net his company its best year yet. He was 31 years old. He signed the paperwork. He drove off the lot in a brand new S-Class. 18 months later, Daniel was selling that same car for $11,000 less than he paid for it, just to make a payroll. Here's the strange part. Daniel wasn't reckless. He wasn't stupid. He did everything the world tells you rich people do. He just didn't understand something that almost nobody tells you until it's too late. Getting rich and staying rich are two completely different skills. And the second one isn't about what you buy. It's about what you stop buying. This is the story of 7 purchases, 7 ordinary, tempting, totally justifiable purchases that quietly keep people poor. And it's the story of what happened when Daniel finally learned to stop making them. The first thing wealthy people stop buying is the car that announces they've made it. Here's a number most people never sit with. The average new car loses around 20% of its value in the first year, and by year 5 it's worth roughly 40 to 60% less than the sticker price. A $90,000 SUV isn't a $90,000 asset. It's a $50,000 hole with leather seats. Daniel didn't know that number in 2011. He knew what it felt like to walk into a client meeting and see the valet hand him back his keys to a car that made people notice him. That feeling was real. It just wasn't free. It cost him roughly $900 a month once you counted the loan, the insurance, and the maintenance packages the dealership talked him into. Here's what changed. 3 years later, Daniel sat across from a mentor, a man named Walter Sussman who'd built and sold 2 manufacturing companies in Ohio. And Walter asked him a simple question. What does your car do for your net worth? Daniel didn't have an answer. Walter drove a 7-year-old Toyota Avalon. Not because he couldn't afford better, because he'd done the math once, and the math never stopped mattering to him. Every dollar that goes into a depreciating asset is a dollar that can't go into an appreciating one. Wealthy people don't necessarily avoid nice cars forever, but the ones who stay wealthy buy them in cash, buy them late, and never let a car payment sit on their monthly budget like rent. The rule Daniel eventually adopted: if you can't buy it twice without blinking, you can't afford it once. The second thing they stop buying is the house that's bigger than their life actually requires. After that first good year, Daniel and his wife Priya looked at a 5-bedroom house in a gated community outside Houston. 6,000 square feet, a pool, a media room they'd use maybe 4 times a year. The mortgage broker approved them for it instantly. That was the trap. Approval isn't the same as affordability. The bank was measuring what Daniel could technically pay. Nobody was measuring what that payment would do to his ability to survive a bad year. They bought it. The mortgage was $5,200 a month. Property taxes added another $1,400. Then came the landscaping service, the pool maintenance, the higher utility bills for rooms they barely used. This is the part nobody tells you about big houses. The purchase price is just the entry fee. The real cost is what economists call the carrying cost. Everything it takes to maintain the asset month after month, whether or not your income holds steady. When Daniel's company hit a rough patch in 2013, a client went bankrupt and stiffed him on a $110,000 invoice. That house didn't feel like an asset anymore. It felt like a hostage situation. He couldn't sell fast enough to help, and he couldn't stop paying without wrecking his credit. Wealthy people who stay wealthy tend to buy homes that cost less than they could technically afford, often using something like the rule of thumb, where housing costs stay under 25% of take-home pay, not the 40+% banks will happily approve. The house should support the life. It shouldn't define the risk. Daniel and Priya sold that house in 2015 and bought something a third smaller. Priya told Daniel, in a conversation he'd later repeat almost word for word, "I don't miss the guest wing. I miss the money we used to have." The third thing they stopped buying is the hot tip. In early 2014, a friend of Daniel's, a guy from his old college fraternity who'd made real money in oil and gas, told him about a penny stock. Some exploration company in the Bakken. "This one's going to triple," he said. Daniel put in $18,000, nearly all of his liquid savings at the time. 6 weeks later, it was worth $2,900. Here's what wealthy people who stay wealthy understand that most people learn the hard way. Excitement is not a strategy. If an investment makes your pulse rise before you've read a single financial statement, that's not opportunity. That's your nervous system being hijacked by a story. The data backs this up starkly. Study after study on retail investor behavior shows that individual investors chasing hot stocks and market timing dramatically underperform the market average over time. Not because the market is rigged, but because emotional buying and panic selling destroy returns. Boring, diversified, unglamorous investing beats exciting investing, on average, almost every single time. After the Bakken stock collapsed, Daniel didn't stop investing. That would have been its own mistake. He stopped investing in stories. He started investing in index funds, in his own business, in things he actually understood. Wealthy people don't chase tips. They buy boring, and they buy it consistently for a very long time. Boring is what compounds. The fourth thing they stop buying is the automatic upgrade. This one's quieter than the others, and it's the one that gets almost everybody at every income level. Behavioral economists call it lifestyle creep. The way spending rises to match income almost automatically, so that a raise never actually changes your financial position. It just changes your monthly outflow. When Daniel's business recovered in 2016 and started generating real profit, he and Priya did what felt natural. Nicer restaurants, twice a week instead of once a month. A cleaning service. Private school for their older daughter at $22,000 a year. None of these purchases was crazy on its own. Together, they quietly absorbed almost his entire increase in income. This is the mechanism that keeps high earners, doctors, lawyers, sales executives making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, living paycheck to paycheck despite the number on their W-2. They're not buying yachts. They're buying a slightly better version of normal over and over until normal costs everything they make. The people who actually build lasting wealth do something almost boring in response to a raise. They let their spending rise by less than their income does, and they send the gap somewhere it can grow. Not all of it, just the gap. Daniel started doing this in 2017. Every time revenue jumped, he capped his own household spending increase at roughly a third of it and moved the rest into savings and reinvestment in the business. It didn't feel dramatic. That was the point. The fifth thing they stopped buying is prestige for its own sake. In 2017, Daniel joined a country club outside Houston. Initiation fee, $22,000. Monthly dues after that, about $800. The pitch from everyone who was already a member was that this is where deals get made. This is where you meet people. Daniel played golf there for 2 years. He made exactly one business connection that led to actual revenue. A small contract worth about $14,000 over its lifetime. He spent roughly $42,000 over those 2 years to get it. This is the trap prestige spending sets. It's never marketed as vanity. It's marketed as networking, as access, as an investment in relationships. Sometimes that's true. Often it's an expensive way to feel important around people who are, statistically, mostly there to feel important too. The wealthy people who stay wealthy get ruthless about this distinction. They ask a blunt question before any prestige purchase. The club membership, the fancy conference, the alumni association board seat. What is this actually generating? In dollars or in relationships I couldn't get another way? If the honest answer is, it makes me feel like I've arrived, that's a signal to stop, not a reason to continue. Daniel let the membership lapse in 2019. He said the strange thing was how little he missed it, and how much he didn't miss the $800 showing up on his statement every month whether he played golf or not. The sixth thing they stopped buying is convenience on credit. This is maybe the least glamorous item on this list, and it might be the most important. High-interest consumer debt, credit cards especially, often carrying interest rates north of 20%, is one of the most reliable wealth-destroying forces that exists, because it works against you exactly the way compound interest works for you when you're investing. Daniel carried a credit card balance for almost 4 years without really registering it as a problem. It hovered between $6,000 and $14,000. He always made the minimum payment, sometimes more. He thought of it as background noise, not danger. Here's the number that changed how he saw it. At 22% interest, an $8,000 balance, paid down slowly, doesn't just cost you $8,000. It can cost you close to double that in interest over the years it takes to clear it if you're only paying it down slowly while adding new charges. That's not a rounding error. That's a second car, paid entirely to a bank for nothing. Wealthy people who stay wealthy treat high-interest debt the way you treat a leak in the hull of a boat. Not something to manage, something to stop immediately before anything else. Daniel and Priya spent 8 months in 2018 aggressively paying that balance down to zero, and they haven't carried a credit card balance since. He still uses credit cards constantly for the rewards. He just pays them off completely every single month without exception. The seventh thing might be the most counterintuitive. Wealthy people stop buying their own time back too cheaply, which really means they stop underspending on the things that protect their time and their judgment. For years, Daniel did his own taxes. He also handled his own contracts, wrote his own website copy, and negotiated his own commercial lease, all to save money. In 2019, an accountant he finally hired found errors in 3 years of past filings that had cost him roughly $19,000 in missed deductions. The accountant's fee was $2,800 a year. This is the flip side of everything else on this list. Cutting spending isn't the goal. Cutting waste is the goal. And sometimes the biggest waste is the hour you spend doing a $9 an hour task instead of the thing that actually grows your business or protects your money. Wealthy people who stay wealthy get specific about this. They stop buying, meaning they stop tolerating cheap, bad advice, the free online contract template instead of a real lawyer for a big deal, the unlicensed handyman for the load-bearing wall, the do-it-yourself approach to something with real financial consequences if it goes wrong. Not because spending money is virtuous, because some expertise is cheaper than the mistake it prevents. Dana put it simply, years later, I used to think saving money and being cheap were the same thing. They're not even close. Cheap almost bankrupted me twice. By 2023, Daniel's company was worth roughly 4 times what it had been at his lowest point in 2013. He didn't get there by buying more. He got there by learning, purchase by painful purchase, what wealth actually protects itself from. The car that loses 40% of its value in 3 years. The house that eats every dollar of a good year and leaves nothing for a bad one. The stock tip that trades your savings for a story. The lifestyle that quietly rises to swallow every raise. The prestige that costs real money and returns only a feeling. The debt that compounds against you instead of for you. And the false economy of being too cheap to buy real expertise when it actually matters. None of these are exciting lessons. That might be exactly why they work. The people who stay wealthy aren't usually the ones who found some secret the rest of us don't have access to. They're the ones who got quietly, boringly disciplined about what they stopped buying, long after everyone else assumed they'd already made it. If there's one thing worth taking from Daniel's story, it's this: getting money is an event. Keeping it is a habit, and habits are built one purchase or one refusal to purchase at a time.